fellow gaming enthusiast myself, I'm always, fascinated by new things that come into gaming, especially the intersection between gaming and blockchain. So it's really fantastic to have you here today.
Thanks. I appreciate the opportunity. I think there's a lot of noise in Web3. So whenever we get a platform to speak and try to cut through that noise and bring real games to real people, I think that's great.
Fantastic. So, if I can ask, how did you first get into crypto, and what has your journey been like up
Oh,
until
that's
now?
a good question. So I created a digital currency in 2005 for game developers internally to use, and it was great because we had about 80 developers working using we called it the Zyon token. Or
Right,
Zion Coin at the time, after Zion National Park, Zion, but I spelled it
right.
with a Y instead. And it was great because we had 80 people, we had artists, we had programmers, we had business people, we had IPs, and we were developing a game where everyone was, using this token like to, it was essentially a measurement of their time. Like if I was willing to give 16 hours to someone's game project, then I would get 16 of these tokens that I could use to pay someone else for my project. And it was going really well for about 7-ish months. And then one of the 80 developers said, "Oh, I can't pay my electricity bill with this token." They ended up
Right.
suing us, and the state of California and the U.S. said, "Oh, well, you have to pay people minimum wage." I'm like, "Well, we're not really." And so that was the first foray, and then obviously we started investing. Um,
Did the token had a value at all, like a monetary value?
it wasn't really a monetary value, is more just the measure of time. So like everything was project based. Like you say, well, I
Right.
need 10 hours to make this 3D art asset, or it's 6 hours to code your user login. And so then essentially it was hour based, right? So every one token was worth 1 hour. um,
Okay. And
but
could I redeem that for my hourly rate of $100 an hour or something like that?
You couldn't in 2005. I think
Right.
we've gotten to a better place now with with tokens. We ran the largest download website for MMOs,
Uh-huh.
and people actually donated with Bitcoin, and this was 2009.
Oh, that's cool.
So
That's so
yeah,
cool.
so it was a good time. Uh, so we've been in it for a while. I love the idea. Time is money. I started selling digital items in the late '90s, right? So I started out as an eSports player, and I was going
Uh-huh.
to events, and I wasn't getting first or second or even third, but I would get like fourth, fifth, sixth, and for fourth, fifth, or sixth, you don't get a check with money. They're like, here's a sword in Diablo, or here.
Right.
Warcraft 3 account or something, and I would just go to eBay and sell it. And then I was like, well, if I can just sell this, why not just start farming? And so I had 7 computers in my parents' basement, all on dial-up, farm a bunch of different MMOs, and we grew to.
Did you write your own bots to farm or something like that?
Yeah. At first, it was all manual, and so it was like me and 6 of my friends. We were just doing things manually. Like, I remember one guy was in charge of cartography and Ultima Online. One guy was PvPing and like Diablo to like just like steal stuff and sell it. And eventually, we did have bots. I think it was like script or something we started using, and that made life a lot easier because when you're a teenager, we were like 16, 17 at the time, everything was just a pixel. Like, oh, I want some grilled cheese, or I want a guitar, or I want a car. I'm like, how many pixels is that? And so like the
Yeah.
idea of like digital items as a way to pay for my university, it paid for some friends university. It was magical. And eventually that kind of pivoted. eBay shut us down. They said, oh, you can't sell gold in the US anymore. And we were just kids, so we pivoted the business. I wish I would have went to Asia and continued to gold farm because people became billionaires, but we we became a legitimate business. Our first 2 real companies were World of Warcraft and Guild Wars as our clients, and so we became legitimate fairly quickly. Um, we started doing free to play.
Mm.
We were an early company doing free to play in 2006. That was Area Games. They acquired us fairly early.
Right.
And then the one I was really excited about, I led PlaySpan. So not a lot of people know PlaySpan because they changed their model. It became Visa Gaming. So Visa acquired them for 240 million or something ridiculous.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
Yeah, it was a good exit, but the basis for the company was to do exactly, kind of what things are happening with 3 now. Is like if you're playing Star Trek online or Lord of the Rings online, you could trade your items between users, or you could sell your items. So we created the first publisher-sponsored marketplace, and there was no blockchain at the time, but gaming companies have a good handle on things, um, and I absolutely love that. And it was too early. We had to pivot to more of a payments model. And then I
Yeah.
did a few more companies, exited, became an investment banker, and did a bunch of transactions. I became like known as the if your company's in trouble in the game industry, you came to me, and so we did like 22 transactions. Um, but towards the end, we started doing all these Web3 like capital raises. Shrapnel was my very last client, and I was like, well, if they're veterans, I'm a dinosaur, or I'm a fossil. But I love the idea that, I don't think ownership is a real world in Web3. I think ownership is fake, but I think participation is real. And if you
Yeah.
are allowed to participate in an ecosystem that you spend your time, then that's great. And so we jump back in with this. And so I think that's a long answer of saying, like, I was born into digital items and I love it here.
No, I love it, and I love to hear it. I was so I the one MMO that I sunk hundreds of hours in is called Cabal Online.
Yeah, I know Cabal
It's
Online. I worked on it.
You did.
I did.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
What did you do on it specifically?
We were the publishing partner. We brought it over. Who was the developer? But essentially, we did localization for it.
Okay, so just making sure that servers and channels in each area kind of work the way they should, and yeah,
That's
because
right.
I remember there's
So we
when you
did
sign
some
up.
balancing that was a little like for most of the games we brought over from either South Korea, Japan, or China. Like they were intentionally very grindy, right? Because they were free to play.
Yeah,
We did try to balance them a little bit better. So we did some balancing changes, but for the most part, they were just straight ports, and we wanted to make sure that they were going to be fun and understandable. And so you'd have a lot of these, very intricate stories that made sense in Asian mythology, but then when you came to the U.S., they'd be like, I don't know. A lot of people don't even care about stories sometimes. But the idea was try to take this big story and Disneyfy it to where like anyone could
right.
pick it up. And so we called it globalization, not just localization. Um, so it was a good time. But yeah, I haven't thought about Kubal in a long time. That was an early one. That was like 2005, 2006, 2007. It was like one of the
Yeah,
first
yeah,
games
yeah.
that
I
came
think
over.
that's when it was released, and I do remember at the time because I picked it up around that period. That it was indeed very grindy. You kind of had to you had skills, different thresholds of skills, and in order to get better, you had to either use the skills a lot, like go dungeons or go kill mobs or whatever, or go at the training dummy, and you would just have to manually go at that training dummy for hours and hours and hours on end. Later on, they've actually implemented some mechanics that you could auto train at the training dummy, so you could just leave your computer to run and you would just
Yeah.
automatically skill level up your skill and stuff. But I've
Well, I'm
definitely
glad they
spent a lot of
allow you to
time.
do that. Like I had like different ways of balancing things on the F1 key, so it would like macro for me when I was away. Like
Yeah.
you'd have this weird like that drinking bird that would like hit your key.
Yeah, no, 100%. And then you started getting, you had a few companies that were making and selling bots. At first, the bots were free. Everyone got hooked on the bots in Cabal Online. And then you would have to pay a subscription to continue using the bot. It was a good strategy and probably a good run for those companies for a few years.
Yeah, I think bot companies still do well, and in fact, I spent the majority of my career fighting bots in
Right.
MMOs, right? But actually, at midnight when they're deconstructing them, we embrace them. So we actually allow people to have multiple bots, and we actually give you bots that you can acquire by playing games or by buying them from other users. So other users can train up bots to sell to you. Then you can go farm different games that you don't own. And so like we've definitely embraced bots. Because
That's
you know,
fascinating because, yeah, normally, like, most games are just trying to minimize or to completely remove the idea of bots. So tell me a little bit about Midnight then. What's the vision and how does that tie into the game that you're developing, Evergreen?
yeah. So uh, we created this what I call a new genre of MMO. It's the deconstructed MMO. For most MMOs, like Cabal Online, you need two things to be an MMO. You need a persistent world and you need a social hub, right? There has to be more people in this world. And
Right.
what we had decided was, we don't really need the persistent world, right? Everything is connected. If there is going to be a metaverse at some point, everything's going to have bridges to bridges. And so what you really need is the social hub. And so Evergreen for us is that social hub that connects all of our games together. Um, so if you were to break apart World of Warcraft or Cabal Online, you could probably break it into 26 separate games that all combine into one. And so we broke that apart and
Right.
we said, like, well, this is a fishing game, this is a Barbie dress up game, this is a house decorating game, this is a racing game, this is a pet simulator. And those are all their own separate games, and those games should be able to stand alone. So they're what we call double A games. So not as expensive to make as triple A, but above indie. So budgets are, let's say, 1 to 5 million per game.
Okay.
So decent side games. And actually, you're in the UK, you might appreciate the double A. There's a lot of really great double A publishers in the UK. Team 17, Curve
Oh yeah.
Digital. I think they make really fun little games. I think Team 17 did like 26 games last year. Uh,
Team 17 are these the guys behind the Worm series?
exactly, the Worms
I
guys.
love
Yeah,
those. Yeah, yeah,
exactly right. Yeah,
yeah.
I'll play a game of Worms with you later after the podcast. Like, what a fun game.
100%. I haven't played it in so long. I used to just love playing it. I played the 2D ones. I've also played the 3D ones as well.
Yeah,
And yeah, really fun games. Love them.
yeah. No, well, I think that's the key word. They're fun games, and they're fun for a certain reason. Um, uh, that's a word that I think gets thrown around on Web3 quite a lot, is fun. And what
Mm,
people really mean is fulfillment, because you get fulfilled in different ways, right? Like Worms, it's a fun social party game. You're not there to, farm materials that you're going to like go and sell to things.
right.
It's this, yeah, you're zeroing the moment. You're enjoying either with your friends or with online play. And so like every game has its own type of fulfillment. And I think in Web3, you have to, you can't make a game for everyone. So a game for everyone is a game for no one. You have to figure out what your core niche is, and you make a game based on that niche, and that game has built-in audiences. Uh, so, like for us, we think 70% of those audiences don't want to touch the Web3 part. Like they don't really want to worry about trading, they don't want to worry about crafting, they don't want to worry about anything online. But 30% of them we expect to participate. And so if you're
Okay.
playing Worms, your time is money, or like time is money, friend, right from WoW. Uh, if you put in 70 hours to that game, you should be rewarded in some way, whether you've done achievements or you've done story mode campaigns with your friends. We all touch these worlds in some way, and whether we know it or not, they stay with us when we go to new games or when we go to they're just part of our life, right? We grew up, some of us, I remember playing GoldenEye, right, on N64
Right.
with my friends, and I still think about that lovingly. And so like we want to have something to go forward with the player, right? The stories that we do matter, the stories that we've done live on, but do in a way that's like it doesn't make you super powerful, right? You have to like uh, be thoughtful how it works, right? If like you have this sword of ogre smashing that you achieved in one game, you can't take that to a racing game. What that sword going to do? And so we have a fairly interesting system of semantic interoperability that we think will carry over and people will enjoy, and it kind of connects everything together.
So when you said that you expect about 30% of people to be interested in Web3, is that based on a focus group or some kind of research that you guys have done to determine that?
Yeah, so we actually done a lot of focus groups. One of the favorite ones is one with Deloitte. That was,
Mm,
that's actually even our white paper. I think we're one of the only Web3 game companies that has a Deloitte logo. Very expensive, and but
I bet it is. Yeah.
yeah, it was not. It was enjoyable to work with them. Actually, it was a great gaming team. Um, but what they had found was the biggest issue in gaming right now, because there's so much choice in gaming, is once a person finds their main game, they stick in that main game, and now it's very hard to peel them away to play something different. And the way that we look at solving that problem with Midnight is like we don't want you to move. If you want to stay in that game, stay in that game. But we want to build a circular economy. So if you're playing whatever game that is, Cyberpunk Metalhead 42, right, an FPS game, and people, you love that game, you want to spend time and money in that game. Maybe you want to buy an item from the item store. Well, Midnight doesn't sell items in the item store. other players do. And so, say you want this, black frog skin. Well, the only way to get that black frog skin for your FPS is if you go play Barbie Dress Up. You don't want to play Barbie Dress Up, but someone in Canada or someone in the Philippines, they love those games, and so they're setting on 20 black frog skins, and they're meaningless to them in their game, but they're meaningful for you. And so you're now willing. It's a hardship, right? If you don't want to play another game, you're willing to spend $2 on a skin. And so that's the whole idea, where the utility and other games will help other games be a little longer lasting. And that's actually something people don't talk about too often. Is games lifespans are actually very short. You have
Mm,
maybe 3 to 6 months for a typical game before it starts to decline. Um,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, I feel
so
like probably like especially accurate in single player experiences
oh,
with no
100%.
without a lot of replayability. Like for me, even single player, if it's done right, and add new elements like a Souls, like Elden Ring, Dark Souls, this kind of game, you
Yeah,
could still go
too
in
hard
for
for
the
me.
challenge. You could go back in for the challenge and still have an enjoyable experience. Whereas if you play a story focused game like God of War, which is an amazing game, um, you maybe don't want to go back because it's like I know the story and it's very story driven. Or like Hellblade, it's like 5 or 6 hour experience, but it's fully story driven. So it wouldn't make me want to go back. I feel MMOs maybe have longer lifespan, and then at the other end of the spectrum, you have the GTA games that have like 12-year lifespan or something.
Yeah, like if we ever got a game that lasted, we'll chase success. I think we just try to be more conservative. So like our idea is, we want to have to the point where there's a game a month, right? Like Team 17, 26 games last year. Like we'd be happy with 12
Right,
games. And you might like the game that comes out in January, you hate the game that comes out in June, you're okay with the game that comes out in September, but like in November you really love that game. And so maybe users play 3 or 4 games a year out of the 12. And we think that's a pretty good number, because if it's single player game, or even if it's multiplayer, if you get, I feel at a minimum you should be getting about 20 hours of a game, right? If you're paying
mm,
for something, 20 hours seems like a good place. And so we think there should be at least repeatability for at least 20 hours. To you've done everything, you've created a lot of achievements, you've got your $20 worth for 20 hour, dollar an hour. That seems fair. um, and so that's kind of the goal. um,
that's cool. So do you, when you build these separate games, do they have elements that are interconnected? Or I'm also guessing in terms of the workflow and the development workflow, you kind of have to maybe have an engine that works, that can produce multiple types of games, so you don't have to like rebuild the wheel every time essentially.
yeah. So that's exactly right. So the guys over at Playable Worlds, they're building their own engine so they can, make a bunch of games. We took a
Right.
more cost efficient approach, and so like we went to studios. So like our 3 studios, they have specialized in certain kind of games. So like the one in the UK, they do card games and racing games. The one in LA, they do like 2D pixel brawlers. The one in Thailand, they do kind of things like Overcooked and like Moving Out, and
Hmm.
kind of like top-down fun games. And so we went to these companies because they've already had engines for them, right? I think our 2D Pixel Brawler, the original engine of that game, cost about $6 million to make, and we're able
Right.
to develop it for less than 1.5 million. And so whenever we launch a game, we're almost already in profit. And so that's kind of our model. We don't want to recreate the wheel. We're not trying to make new genres of games. We're taking genres that people already like. We are adapting a story. Now, every game should be able to stand on its own. Like if we launch a game, the Web3 shouldn't matter. People should want to play it because it's a fun game to
Right.
them, right? And they get their fulfillment from that. Uh, but we think we'll extend the lifetime of that game with Web3, and so that's either player-driven mods or DLC expansion. Like there's a lot of things you can do to expand the life of a game. But when that game launches, it's a people can look at it as its own world. The primary reason to play that game is because that game has a primary story, but there is a secondary story to every game that feeds into a central narrative that advances
Right.
the MMO. And then
Right.
we have a fairly cool tool system that developers and IP holders like, because maybe 2 years ago you probably heard the word interoperability a lot. and then it disappeared because interoperability is hard.
It
I
is
believe
hard.
we've solved for it. Most developers and teams like it. We've found a way to, uh, I think there's let's say there's six issues with interoperability. There's technical challenges, right? There's just
Mm.
incompatible technology and pipelines among different studios, which we've solved for. There's aesthetic and narrative challenges, which we solve for. Just really functions and mechanics, like if like I said earlier, if you have this sort of overslaying in a fantasy fighting game, and you go to a racing game, how do you solve for that? Which we figured out a way. Um, so there's like the development side. On the next side, it's like legal challenges, right? If I have Star Trek or Star Wars in one game, how do you take that to 15 other games without Disney getting mad? And so
Yeah.
kind of had to think with legal challenges, which I think we've solved for. Um, there also needs to be some kind of business incentives because developers don't like new tools, right? Unless there's either users or money. Like they're probably not going to use your new tool and work with interoperability. So like we've kind of worked with that with the token. And the biggest thing I think with Web3 is game companies have to find some level of cannibalism for their own revenue, and they have to give back to the players, right? So if I'm selling black T-shirts, which I think we both like, the idea is Midnight itself could sell black T-shirts. Maybe we sell 100 black T-shirts, we make $1 million or something. Uh, that's great for us, but like we really need to turn that over. So like now, instead of Midnight getting $1 million for black T-shirts, we give it to the users. So we lose $1 million, but now we have a user base that wants to stick around because they can see how they can make money in the game, and it's not like a scammy grab. It's like, hey, they played the game, they got the black dye and they got the wool, they crafted it, and someone else wanted to buy it because they wanted the black T-shirt to wear. Um, so instead of us, profiting, we give it to the users, and Midnight makes its money from the upfront sales. So I think that's a lot of things that Web3 companies get wrong. We're like, oh, I'm going to have this NFT, I'm going to have this token, and we're going to do well. But if you can't keep the lights on to keep the game studio alive, then you're in trouble. And we're starting to see that now with a lot of companies that have launched tokens, then tokens that did well, but there's not enough liquidity in the token, and they can't afford to keep the lights on at their studio. So we've probably looked at 7 or 8 companies now that are they're on the verge of shutting down, either good IPs, good teams, good technology, and we're looking at all of them. So like we're definitely a consolidator in Web3 space, and I think that's going to be coming in the next 6 to 8 months,
Right.
where some companies they're just not going to be able to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, at the other end of this spectrum, you have game publishers and gaming studios like Ubisoft that
Yeah,
are jumping on NFTs because it's hype. I remember you used to have NFTs for weapons in some Ubisoft games, and then you stopped hearing about them. Like after 2021, after the NFT hype kind of cooled down a little, so did those companies with the NFTs. And I didn't have an opinion at the time. Like I'm really optimistic about tech. I always like want to find out what the next thing is, what it does, how it works. I'm curious, but like gamers, from what I know, from what I've seen on Reddit, they tend to be quite cagey when you
yeah,
introduce a new mechanic, especially out of all audiences, Redditors, which were proven to be the least profitable audience that you could ever market to.
yeah,
um, they were very cagey about the idea of NFTs and saw them only as a cash grab or another way that Ubisoft or EA Games can make more money off of already 60 $70 AAA games that they
right.
sell.
Yeah,
And
quadruple A now, right? Isn't that the thing? $80 quadruple A games. Isn't that what
oh
they
yeah,
were
it
pitching?
was wasn't that a recent one? Which one was
I
the
think that was a
first
meme.
quad?
Yeah,
Oh
I don't
right,
know
they
who says
called.
it
I
was
think
just
they
a meme.
called it the Assassin, not the Assassin's Creed, the pirate game that Ubisoft released
That's
recently.
right. I think you're right.
Yeah, it was referred to as a quadruple A game. You couldn't even leave the ship and go and loot the town. But yeah, it just goes to show that like these companies, they've become so important in the consciousness of the of gamers, that even though I'm sure many gamers that play their games resent the company, but they still continue to play the games.
Yeah,
I've personally really gotten bored of. I haven't played any Assassin's Creed past, I think, the third or the fourth one, but just to see that there's one coming out, just like NFL, just like FIFA, it's like I don't think it should be that way. I think a formula for games is make a great game that people enjoy it with a unique story, and then try to offer that experience once again without going back to, oh, let's just milk this until we've exhausted everything around that.
Yeah, well, I think I like that they just milk thing. I mean, that seems to be trendy in video games and Hollywood, right? If there was an IP that was a
Yeah.
success, we're going to, take those fans for everything they're worth.
Yeah.
I know. I was chatting to a woman last night. Um, uh, I won't mention her company, but we were both kind of like airing our grease with Diablo 4. We both like the Diablo series, but you spend $70 for a game, and then now you have to spend 15 to 20 bucks, $30 even for like a horse cosmetic, and where I can go buy a DLC for 20 or $30 for like a
Right.
brand new game, and so that's kind of wild. And so at midnight, like our whole idea is, midnight's going to sell. Our games up front are 5 to 40 bucks, right? We're not going to be a $70 game, but we'll 5 to 40 bucks. We will have an item store where you can go and buy that skin, but Midnight's not selling it, right? That's you selling it, right? That's a player selling it. So it's player to player transactions, which we think users will be a little more interested because it's not a money grab at this point. It's us providing a service because users do want to, I think there was a study, back to the studies. I think 74% of gamers said they would probably spend more on games if they were able to, have agency over those items, right? If they could
Mm.
sell them in a secondary market, which we want to have a primary market, or if they transcended the current game they're playing, right? If, it was like, think about credit card loyalty points. Like if I spend money in this game, I should get loyalty to your platform or your publishing service or whatever it is. And so like we are leaning into that, right? We're not going to make a huge amount of money because of allowing users to buy and trade items among each others. But what you do buy and what you do get as a company is a loyal fan base that knows, like, oh, if I buy this midnight game and I play it for 20 hours, maybe I acquire 4 grapes, and those 4 grapes are worth, $10. Well, now that's 50% off my next midnight game.
Yeah, I feel that's very valuable for users, especially when people are used to like to grind or to do something or to work for something in a game.
Mhm.
Like a lot of gamers have been programmed to
Yeah,
kind of enjoy a certain extent of well, when it comes to RPG, at least there's a certain level of grinding that you kind of expect, especially if it's online, if it's an MMO.
right.
So to have a marketplace where you could sell these items or take them to other games, that's super exciting. I would love to hear and to learn more about how exactly it works, because like you said, I think a bit earlier, you couldn't import a sword in a racing game, so I'm guessing there's a certain criteria or certain rules that allow you to import these items. But also, not just what the item does, but I'm also curious how exactly you would translate, say, damage from this game into the other game, and how does that get calculated with the sword that you transfer over.
Yeah. So all digital items that are crafted will have tags. They'll have certain attributes associated with them. Right now, we have a list. The first basic list is 42 different tags, and so
Hmm.
it could be you know a quickness tag, right? And so that can make you 1 or 2% faster. And
Right.
the game would decide, like, well, there's running in my game, or there's driving in my game, there's flying in my game. So quickness makes sense, right? It can make you faster. But then there could be something that makes your aiming more accurate, right? Or your headshots more deadly, right? The critical multipliers times two. Well, that might not make sense in a lot of games. And so a game would ignore that. So every game developer that comes into our system, they get this list of 42 different drop downs, and they say, well, these 10 make sense for my game, right? And so they'll take those 10 games or 10 tags. And then there's different keys that keys are our version of NFTs. Um,
Right.
and everyone has a loadout. You can have 4 keys equipped at a time, and you go to different games. And so you might have 4 keys, and the fishing game and the tags, give you a better chance of collecting black bass. But when you go to the fighting game, well, now because you have these 4 black keys associated with you, well, then maybe your skin's hardened, so you take 10% less damage. And so the keys do different things in different games, but they do something in almost every game. And so it's not always one for one, but it is meaningful, right? So if you spent time and resources, crafting and are buying from another player, you know that that game will live on, and then the materials associated with that game. So like 5 years, 6 years from now, maybe there's a new game that comes out, and you're like, well, I have this, black fishing key. from this game, I don't play that game anymore. But the resources, so like I'm going to break it apart, I'm going to destroy it, I'm going to get the resources, I'm going to build something new. And
Right.
so yeah, so
That's
we're
very
we're
cool.
excited. Yeah, I think it's going to be a fun way to look at things. At
Oh
least
yeah,
it's unique.
definitely. Yeah, and the kind of combinations that you get and the yeah, that like discovering how certain tags do certain things in
That's
those
going to be a
games.
lot of
That's
fun for people. Yeah,
Oh yeah, I bet it will. Yeah, and maybe would you know, or you wouldn't find out until you've jumped into this new game to figure out what they
yeah.
do in this game.
So we have some things that are known, and then some things are mystery. So like you might have to craft something to find out what it does. And I'm sure like in a month after game comes out, there's going to be someone with a web page like, hey, this is the crafting resources
Of
if you combine.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So but at the beginning, like we want people to discover. And so we've done some things with internal tests where we have one game that's a 4-person kind of dungeon runner, and if everyone crafts different creeds, your dungeon is completely different, right? So if someone has like, oh, I want more poison skeletons, and so like, oh, well, now you're playing more poison skeletons. One guy might have things for like hidden NPCs, and so like, well, now you can go to this hidden vendor and buy stuff. Another guy might have like makes the boss fight 10 times harder, and so you don't, or just makes your heads giant, right? It could be just visual, like everyone
Right.
has giant heads, and so like you don't know, it's going to be kind of wacky. It's almost like, do you remember like the Mad Libs comics where you like write a story, but then you'd fill it in with like random words?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of how the games are played, right? The games become a little bit random depending on what keys people are using in your party.
That's a very cool idea. I'd love to experience that.
Yeah, well, we'll get you into a beta at some point.
100%. Yeah, definitely. I feel like I'm the right target audience too.
There you go.
So do you guys then see, because you've said sometimes you invite developers and you list the kind of tags that they have available for their game. So is Midnight then also kind of an infrastructure layer for gaming companies to come in
Ooh,
and build in this
yeah,
interconnected universe?
gave me chills. Whenever I hear the word infrastructure or platforms, it sounds like you're not being very creative. At that point, like I'm just building tools. But
Yeah, I mean tools are
I mean,
very
we
important.
are.
I'm just
Yeah.
yeah.
So like I really want to like I'm a storyteller. I want the idea that the worlds are connected. The way I look at it is like the games that we publish ourselves. Those are first party games. Let me give it now. So like Disneyland or Disney World. If you go to Disney World, you can go to like the Star Wars experience, the Pixar experience. Those are experiences. Like you feel you're in that IP when you're in that world. But then if you go to like the Teacups ride, you're just on the Teacups ride. And so the way that we look
Hmm.
at games is like first party games are experiences, and then third party games, if a developer wants to come to us, they're a ride. And so everyone's a part of the same ecosystem, but just some are a little more immersive than others. And so we do want more people to come in. We do have an infrastructure, we do have a tool play. Um, in the beginning, it's not going to be like Steam where everyone can just like throw a game on our system. It's going to be more
Right.
curated, but we do get to the point where like people want to develop you. Like, do you want to be just a game without a companion app and without the ever living world that is Evergreen, or do you want to jump in or not? And so I think there's going to be some fun things we can do with that, bringing more games in. We're actually negotiating with a large game company right now. They've raised 50
Mhm.
million, and they don't have a Web3 play, and we're like, let us be your Web3 play. And so we might have some large games we're bringing in.
That sounds really cool. That sounds really
Yeah,
cool.
I'm excited about everything we're doing.
So then Midnight is a relatively new venture, right? From what I could tell, from what I could read as well, I couldn't
Yeah,
find a demo or something. So Evergreen is still in development
that's right.
as of right now.
So we have the version alpha, I guess. It's not even
Right.
version one. It's pretty early. You can play you can download it on iOS or Android. We'll have a web app that you can play. It's 2% of eventual, but like people wanted it now because people in Web3 they want to get in early. They want to start farming for airdrops. They want to start farming for materials. And so the thing is now people can come in, they can farm things, and their ticket, I don't know, it takes a long time to farm. Like we do not make things easy on people. It's kind of like go back to the Korean grind for MMOs. So like
Yeah.
I think the most I've seen any of our players. There's one guy who's been playing since launch, and he has like 6 tickets, and tickets are you can transfer for tokens. The ratio is for right now it's fairly high. So like if you have a ticket now, it's worth a lot more than the tickets will be the next season because it's going to get easier as the app gets
Right.
more developed. So like if you want to get in now, that's the most bang for your buck. Uh, it's It's okay. I mean, I log and I play it every day because I have to test it, but it's definitely not
Yeah.
the full game yet. Uh,
Right.
and so, like some people, like, oh, like, it's a process I can see. Let me see early. A lot of people can't see through the process. They need a finished product. And so, like, I'm like, if you want to wait for the finished project, I think that's what I tell people to do. But if you're there because your level of fulfillment is earning tokens and be ready for that token pop, then maybe you don't mind as much.
Yeah, well, I feel that's a strong hook for Web3 and crypto people in general. Like the fact that they have to be in early. That's one of the
That's
things
right.
that So it's a good enough hook. I wouldn't expect a lot of them to think that this is a finished product or finished game. It's also like the gaming industry has kind of made it so that early access has become fairly common.
Yeah.
You
To
expect to
both good
pay
or
up.
bad, right?
If to, yeah, exactly. But I mean, I have played a few really good early access games that I couldn't even, I couldn't tell it's early access. You could have just
Yeah.
downloaded that game for me, get me to play it, and I couldn't tell you, yeah, this is early access. Like one of them that came to mind was V Rising a couple years back when it was still in
I
early
see that.
access, and it was very polished for an early access game.
I don't know that game, but it looks good. Kind of Diablo-ish. I'm just pulling up the Steam
Uh,
page now.
yeah.
Very
So the
positive.
idea is kind of
78,000 positive reviews.
it's
I've never
very,
heard of
yeah,
this
it's
game.
it's it's
Wow.
big, it's big game. You play as a vampire,
There you
and
go.
you build your castle, right? So it has some of the like Valheim grindy mechanics. You got to go get stone, go get some wood, and go get other materials, and then refine materials to build your castle. But then one unique feature that it has, you being a vampire, is that during the day you have to travel. You have to stick to the shadows. If you don't stick to the
That's
shadows,
fun.
you'll burn. So that kind of changes the way you navigate the
Yeah.
map. It's really cool.
I've added it to my wish list. I'm going to wait for the next sale, and I'll add it to the backlog of games. But yeah, I've never heard of this game. Um, I did Survivor games. We did play the Vampire Hunter Survivor. Um, I quite liked it. I played on mobile. I played on Xbox. I was
I
surprised
haven't
like
played it.
how simple the game it was to how fun it was. And then after I played it for like 20 hours, my friend said, "Oh, you like casinos?" I'm like, "What are you talking about? I don't gamble. I live in Vegas." It's like Vampire Hunter is like basically just a slot machine. Like it's just numbers and everything flashing around, and they're like, "Oh,
Right.
I guess it kind of is."
What's it
Well,
called? Vampire?
Vampire Hunter Survivor should be or Vampire Survivors. I added the
Oh,
Hunter.
Vampire Survivors.
Yeah, I added the Hunter.
Oh, nice. I see. Overwhelmingly positive. 200,000 reviews.
Yeah,
Wow.
and it is like the simplest game to make. I believe they've recently added multiplayer. I haven't tried multiplayer yet,
That's
but
cool,
I
though.
love the idea, and that's I think something we're going to see in Web3 where tools, AI, things are getting it's a lot easier to make games. I think there's going to be a game that one person make that hits $1 billion in revenue. Like I'm very excited for the future of game development.
Oh, yeah. Definitely possible. It may have already happened if you're familiar with Manor Lords.
I did see that game. Yeah, I didn't play it, but like that was quite a lot of hype, right? Like people were.
Yeah, it's a real-time strategy slash world-building game where you build your own medieval village, but you can
Okay.
also raise an army and just go to war. It's early access, but the thing gets built by one guy over 7 year period, and
Oh,
it
that's
looks
fantastic.
amazing. It looks like a AAA game.
Yeah,
It looks fluid, and yeah, one guy developed that game. It definitely has become a lot easier to build really good games. But it's also, I feel, the barrier if you're looking to compete with AAA games, it's also much higher because you've got like these astronomical
sure.
budgets for some games, um, and the
And
recent
not only
trend
the
of
budgets, it's
including.
the users, right? So
Mm,
one thing everyone talks about Web3 is like, oh, we're going to onboard the next billion users to Web3 through games. And I'm like scratching my head, like we have 200 million users on Xbox. Like where are we getting these 800, 900 extra million users from for
yeah.
Web3? Um, yeah, so I think core gamers, you know, if we could get to 20 million Web3 players, I think that would be amazing. Like 20 million actually like real gamers, not there because they're hoping that an NFT goes in value or they're going to get something from the token, but they're there to play the game to enjoy the game. Like I think that let's hit that milestone first before we worry about a billion.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I feel that's exactly why maybe not a lot of people have go on and play the Web3 game now is that for the longest time you could, like, there was no real any value proposition. It was just, well, this is a game and NFTs look right. Okay, but does it improve my experience? Does it make it unique? Does it add a new twist to it? Or is it the same old formula but plus NFTs? So I feel like with something like Midnight, where you have different worlds that are interconnected, you can interact with items and what, I feel like that's a really good hook for someone to like at least go in and figure it out and see why that experience may not be possible without a Web3, without blockchain.
That's right. So I think a lot of people get very excited about technology and they try to, they try to create problems, right? And I think,
Yeah.
like I said, we had a digital currency in 2005, 2006. We did the player marketplace in 2010. There's a lot of things that doesn't require blockchain the gaming space can do. And so I don't think like Minecraft or Fortnite or Roblox will require it because they're their own walled garden. But something like
Hmm.
Midnight, where we're working with five, six, seven different studios, having a shared ledger like actually makes a lot of sense. And so having a tech stack that people can get like, well, of course, like we're going to use these tags, or our game has to know what this game's talking about. Like I think that makes sense when you have different companies involved. And so, like to me, it's like one of the best use cases for blockchain is because you're doing thing with a bunch of different developers.
Yeah, yeah, I think that is definitely the strongest hook for it. But then there's also the real economy side of things. You
Mhm.
can take these items out, trade them on a market outside of the game, which again, it's a unique thing that you just don't have without blockchain to that extent that is decentralized. You could take, I guess, items out of Counter Strike and sell them on Steam if you wanted to.
Yeah, well, people do, right? I mean, that
Yeah.
secondary market is fantastic. I think last report I read, I can't remember who did the report, but it was like Counter Strike did $200 million a year, and then its secondary item sells for like $1 billion. And I'm like, oh, that's
Wow.
that's what you want, right? Like that's fantastic. Like that's a a rare case where you have a mega hit game. But I think that's that's what you want. You want the ability to take items out and profit from them because there's a bit of RNG, right? You don't know what cash you're going to get. You might get this legendary Hawaii skin for your AK-47, and now it's worth or the knife skins I think were the expensive ones. My
Yeah.
knife.
Yeah,
That's my
yeah.
knife twirl right there.
No,
Yeah,
it's
I
a
think that's
great
super exciting.
it's definitely super exciting. I would love to see more of it, and just to see games that actually feel like games that are have more than just I know I was talking to these guys that work on Phantom Chain. They've developed an MMO game called Est for Kingdom, and it's a great game in that what it tries to achieve, but it's idle play. So for me, it's not super. How should I put it? Like it's it's not for everyone in the terms of in the gameplay mechanics. It's very low maintenance. You go in, you fiddle with some stuff, you go in the next day, rather than an immersive
Yeah.
experience where you're like, got a story and a narrative thread that you follow actively doing the
Mhm.
playing the game.
Yeah. That makes
Uh,
sense. I think there's been a lot of games that doesn't draw me in, but they're fun for the moment, right? I mean, I don't. I like Mario Party, right? When I'm playing with, because we have friends over and everyone wants to play Mario Party, or I might whip out a
yeah,
phone game when I'm in the bathroom for too long and just playing solitaire or something on my phone. So like, I think there's time and places for games where you can find and enjoy. Like, there's different types of games for it, but like to your point, like when I want to actually game, I like to sit in my chair, get immersed in the world. I
yeah,
love single player games. Or I love playing a lot of Fortnite with my nephew and my wife.
that's
And
cool.
yeah, it's I actually had a call yesterday. We already had crowns, so we are getting ready to win again, stack crowns if you play Fortnite. And I forgot I had a call with Namco Bandai, and so I was like, oh, my wife's computer's like right beside me. I was like, okay, I gotta take this call. Don't say anything. And this is work, right? Namco Bandai, a bit large company, and
Yeah.
we got third place as I'm on the phone. And I was like, third's pretty good. And she's mad at me because I had to like take this call. I'm like, it's the best I could do. Like, me too. But
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. The pressures of gaming. I haven't played Fortnite, no, but my girlfriend and I play. We've played several like local and online games together. One of them that we're playing right now is Slay the Spire, and it's a
oh
card
yeah, yeah,
game. Yeah,
I've
and
played it.
it's so addictive. It's very good, and it's got a multiplayer mod, so you can actually install this mod, and you can both play together on the map. You can't like fight the same enemies in the same room,
Mhm.
but she's gonna go one route, I'm gonna go one route, and then if we find relics that are relevant for the other one, we can go to this trading caravan, and we can switch relics and stuff.
I like that.
Uh,
Yeah,
it's
I have not
cool.
played the multiplayer, and I didn't even know it had a multiplayer. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's community. It's a community mod. Someone built it,
Oh,
and
okay.
it works really
Interesting.
well. Actually, it's a good question for Midnight and your guys' vision. Do you expect community to build things with Midnight, or to add new
Yes,
content to the games?
100%. So earlier in the conversation, we talked about games die, 3, 6, 9 months. They don't have long lifetimes. We expect, because of the way we're doing Evergreen, our games will live 9, 12, 16 months. So we get a little longer of a lifespan because communities will be adding mods to the game. Like every key
Right.
we actually look at a mod. So we think we can extend the lifespans there. But also we think the community will let us pick hits, right? We have this what we call the Midnight Scorecard. Is a 5-step process for how we greenlight games to bring them onto the platform. And between me and the rest of the team and the teams that we work with to build games, we're probably close to 400 games.
Oh wow.
Do we develop? Yeah, so it's fantastic. I've done by myself 45 games, and I've only had 2 real failures, and one was wasn't my fault. So I'll say one. Uh,
Fair.
but even in that, um, we want to have a step 6 where we say, look, these are the 10 games that we want to make this year, and we want the community to vote on them. And so that's what one of the use cases for the token, where they can stake them. And if you pick one of the games that last for 10 years, then great, you've done really well. But there is this well, there's a couple books, but one of my favorite books is called The Madness of Crowds.
Hmm.
And this idea is, let me start. Uh, have you ever seen the show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Are you familiar with the concept?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Okay.
used to watch it. Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. So like so they had this thing where like you'd have 50-50, right? And so the odds are 50-50 you get it right.
Yeah.
And then they would have like ask an advisor or an expert. And then you would get like maybe 61% of the time they would get it right. So slightly better than 50-50. And I would say, Midnight are advisors, right? So we get it better than 50-50, but 61%. But when they poll the audience, it was like 87 to 91% of the time they would get it right. And so like if we have this massive audience and we could say, look, here's 10 games, you pick the 2, they're going to pick hits way more than we will. And
Oh
so
yeah.
we're actually very excited about like letting the community come in, help us pick the right games, and then helping extending the life of those games.
That's a very cool idea. And yeah, definitely. I hadn't considered governance when it comes to making games, for sure. So much value in that.
Yeah, well, it's definitely like you can't, there it has to be steps, right? You can't just say, well, what
Right.
games you guys want us to make? Because then you get like the meme stock people, like we want you to make what was
It
that?
can't be fully open ended, because all you're gonna get is this a bit like hentai and Rule 34
That's
stuff if
exactly
it's
right.
open
That's
ended.
exactly
Yeah.
right. Yeah, you know.
Yeah. I know the way the internet works. You give it choice, you give it open choice, it's gonna fuck you up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, where do we go from the conversation now?
Where do you see the industry going in 3 to 5 years from now? The
Oh, that's a
gaming
great question.
industry.
That's a great question. Um, So I think it's not going to be so much Web 2 or Web 3 because I think it's just going to be gaming. I think if you have a live service game, you're going to have to let your users participate. And so whatever technology you're building on, like, maybe it's not a blockchain, but it's whatever your own internal thing is, you're still going to have to let users participate, especially if it's live service. If they put in time and money past a premium upfront sale, I think that's just the that's the future. Um,
Hmm.
we have been fortunate. So what we started 2 years ago, it are now very trendy. So double A premium games, everyone's talking about it this year at GDC. Pal Worlds and Helldivers were the 2 big breakout hits earlier this year. They got everyone
Yeah.
excited for double A games, and so like we looked really smart because we started 2 years ago. Like all the investors came back to us like, "Hey, I thought, what are you guys up to?" Um, we like the companion app. We like that discoverability is an issue for users. And if you look at where do people find, I guess where do they find PC console games? They find them on their mobile
Yeah.
phone. So like discoverability is on your phone. And so if we think leaning into that's the right thing, and then for Web3 for tokens, if you're not a degenerate gambler, the idea of an ecosystem token is better than like I'm going to bet on this one game, this one token, and if this game fails, then my token goes to zero. But in our case, like the token is built. kind of at an MMO model where the value of gold in World of Warcraft would go up on patch days or expansion days. So we built a model where Midnight will always have a patch or an expansion. Like every month, there's something coming, and like you talked about, like people might not like the game in January, but like that April game was super hot, and yeah, so like there's always something new. We're not a game for everybody, so we're niche games. Again, if you try to create something for everybody, you're for nobody, and so like we
Yeah.
think we have the right system. But I think I look at the question mostly for Web3 when people are looking at what comes next in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. There's a lot of guessing. I think we have a good things, but for us, I looked, what has been happening the previous 5 years, like what has been a stable foundation for games, and that's how we came up with Double A Games, because Double A game companies have some of the cleanest balance sheets that you'll see in gaming.
Hmm.
The risk is less. Now the
Right.
chance for a hit is higher, right? So like most of our games will return 1 to 3x, maybe 5x. Uh, Typically. Now, maybe 1 in 30 we get a hit, which is 10x or more. Maybe 1 in 100 games we get a Pal Worlds or a Hell Divers. That's a blockbuster. But we try to be
Right.
very conservative because we want to be around for the long time. Like we're not just like going to launch a token. The founders take a bunch of money and leave. It's like every one of our teams, like you can look at two of the teams we work with, Stainless Games and Way Forward. Those companies are 3 decades old each, right? They've been making games for a long time. And you ask the founders, I'm like, why don't you sell your company? Why don't you retire? Like, well, what would I do? I'm just going to make another game company. Like I have, all these people here.
It's yeah, very good point.
Yeah.
So if yeah, you're saying that there's double A games have a much cleaner balance sheet compared to triple A's, and that's obviously because there's not that amount of budget that goes behind, so the risk tends to be lower. But then that also means that it takes less pressure. It takes some pressure off you guys from having to overpromise and
That's
create
exactly right.
demos that are maybe not accurate, and like it has happened before, and it only happened because of the pressure that the
Mhm.
studio felt at the time to get those people in the game, and then
Mhm.
the people try the game and go like, oh well, I want my money back.
That's right. Yeah. You got that, what, 2 hour rule in Steam, and there's quite a lot of it. Yeah, so
Yeah.
exactly right. I mean, obviously, there's pressure from our teams because we want the game to be good, um, but we don't have to spend 3 years making it heads down. Most of our games are 6 to 18 months, and the game is out the door,
Okay.
and people enjoy it. But that's we have a clever way of doing it. Like I mentioned, we go to
Right.
certain studios that have experience in certain genres, but I think that's a smart way to do it. And like with new AI and new tools, it's going to be even quicker. So we might have a 5-man team knocking out a game every 6 months, and
Right.
that would be super cool. We want to avoid like the hyper casual games. Like we still want our games to have an immersive feel, right? There's a
Hmm.
couple double games I've been playing. I beat Nobody Saves the World out of a company in Toronto, Canada. I think 16
Okay.
12 a.m. games, some 16 a.m. games. I can't remember the name. But it was like this fun little game. You couldn't even play it full screen because it didn't look right. But it was like it was clever. It was fun. It was kind of a 2D game, and just really enjoyed it. I put maybe 22 hours into it for $16. I felt pretty good about my money, and so like that's the idea. You think fun little things.
So then, in terms of the way they look and the way they play and the way and what they offer, are you talking mainly 2D games or 3D or a bit of both? Will they
Oh,
have voice
we're
acting,
yeah. So
etc.,
all
etc.?
games are different. So there might be some 2D games. We might have a chess game, but like here's an FPS game that's fully 3D. There's we're Yeah, it's funny you mentioned voice acting because we're talking to a well-known American fast food franchise that has a well-known actor as their announcer, and so we're talking
Right.
about making an FPS game with this fast food franchise with that actor, and so yeah, some games will have larger budgets. Some games will be look a little more modern. I
Right.
think a lot of people will say like, oh, it's a AAA game, but people don't really have a definition what AAA actually is. Like, I can make a game look graphically fun. What makes AAA is that you've spent more than $60 million on development. And so like I
Yeah.
can have a game that looks like a $60 million game, but like it's only 2 hours because I can't afford to make a 12 to 20 hour game at looking at that level.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And so
yeah. There's not sure if you've played, if it's your cup of tea, but Lies of P is
I've
a
heard of
great
this one, but I
example of
haven't.
that. It's a Souls-like that's
Yeah,
also it's using kind of Bloodborne aesthetics. It's
I'm
like
starting to see a trend in the games that you play.
yeah, I do like those punishing games. I do enjoy them. I've played probably every decent Souls like there is
Yeah,
out there. But the cool thing about Lies of P is that is this studio's first game, and they're an indie studio, and it looks and it feels and it plays like a AAA. And this just goes to show that all you need is a relatively small but passionate team to create a high
that's
quality
exactly right.
game.
Yeah, I'm looking at the videos now. It looks good.
It's very good. I wasn't aware that it's a AAA game only after I finished it. AAA, an indie game, and the
Right.
first game that the studio ever made. Yeah, mind blowing. And I'm sure that with AI, like you mentioned, you're going to have more opportunities to streamline. You were saying by voice acting, yeah, you could pay the actor to come on and do the voice, but you could maybe license the voice and then just use AI to say the lines over and over,
Yeah.
save yourself, additional costs from there.
Yeah, some actors are okay with that. Some aren't. You just have to make the right ones. Like I think Bruce Willis he's very on board. If you want to license Bruce Willis's voice or likeness, I think he's like 100%. But then you
That's
have
very
others who's
cool.
like don't touch it. So like I'll take Bruce Willis all day.
Oh yeah, yeah. Or if you have Scarlett Johansson in Her and
Oh, did you see
OpenAI
that?
going like, I saw it and I couldn't believe it. They're like,
Yeah,
could we use your voice? No. All right, we're gonna use it anyway. But
yeah.
there's
That was wild.
there's so much in AI that right now just is not regulated, and I feel like it's kind of already too late for any pertinent regulation to take place in AI because the big companies that already are backed up by Microsoft, like OpenAI or
Yeah,
Google, they've already scraped everything they could scrape. Like from this
right.
point onwards, everything that's going to happen is you're just going to have barriers for any new entrants in the business, which is just going to further solidify the position of these two or three AI giants. And I'm not sure I like that.
Oh, I mean, I'm looking forward to the day when I just own a bunker in a farm somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and I cast off all technology. But for now, I'm going to keep playing games and making games.
That's
But
fair. That's fair.
the world is getting like if you step back, if I step back from gaming, it's troubling out there. I don't have the answers for how to fix the world, but I can fix some digital economies.
Yeah, or you can just fix, like you said, the reality around you. Just
Yeah,
just going
exactly.
somewhere on
Right.
farmland. Where are you thinking? Arizona. That's a nice.
Arizona. Yeah. No, I actually have friends that moved to Arizona. No, I need some greenery.
Right.
Somewhere where there's some trees. Uh, I don't know. When I figure it out, I'll let you know.
Sweet. Yeah. Same here. I do like that. So I listen to Tool, and I follow the lead singer, and I know that he's got a vineyard and a ranch in Arizona. And it's always really funny to me every time I think of that, because out of all places, he's chosen to open a vineyard
Yeah.
in Arizona where there's like no rain
So
at all.
I'm trying to think like that's it. The cost of water has got to be.
Oh, it's got to be insane. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But apparently grapes grow they produce more sugar content if they struggle. So if they're just at the point of if you don't water them
Interesting.
enough, if they're being underwatered, apparently that maybe it's a strategy. Maybe the wine is
Okay.
just better. I've never
I
had
did not know that.
wine from Arizona though, so
Yeah, I'm gonna
I
say, I
can't
mean,
speak.
Tool is lead singer. Wine.
Yeah, a Maynard
Okay.
Maynard Vineyard.
There it
I'm
is.
sure there must be
Yeah.
in some
Maynard James
supermarkets.
Kenyon does
Yeah.
Catasis Cellars. All right.
Okay.
Jerome, Arizona. There it is. All right. I will. I'll pick that up for the weekend.
Just nice.
I'll let
So
you know
apparently
though.
it takes 7 years for a vineyard
Oh
to
no
break
way.
even. Yeah, it's
That's
three,
longer than
four
a game.
years. It's longer than a game. I was just thinking that. Yeah, because it takes how long does it take Rockstar to build a new Grand Theft? It's like
Oh, the
six,
big
7 years.
games. Yeah.
It's big
Well,
games. Yeah.
I mean, some of those like Bethesda, right? Like the new Fallout, the new Elder Scrolls, and those are like 10-year release schedules. So like, yeah,
Yeah.
it could take a while. But with Rockstar, like they get to milk that game for 10 years after the fact. I think Theft Auto 6 has like grossed more money than any other game in history or something ridiculous. Like it's, they're
Oh
doing
yeah.
all right. I don't feel bad for them.
I don't feel, and I don't feel bad for them. Did you know that they're kind of have a foot in Web3? I was talking to the co-founder for Horizon.io. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them.
That sounds vaguely
They
familiar.
they're in Web3 gaming. They have
Oh
well,
yeah, I've
they've
seen this
developed
logo.
one game, but they also created a sequence engine, which is supposed to help game developers access and use Web3 data seamlessly, and it
Mhm.
also integrates with Unity and other game engines. So that's their thing. And in their funding
Yeah,
round,
great list of
one of the
investors.
Take Two. So the Take Two's there, which means
Yeah,
Rockstar's probably kind of interested in Web3, which is really cool to see. I'm not
yeah,
sure if we're gonna have cryptocurrency or NFTs in GTA 6, but it might just
or
happen in a
something.
future update.
Yeah. Well, what I like about Web3 right now is like everything's kind of hidden, right? People don't have to worry about their wallets. People don't have to worry about like what chain a game is running on. It's just happening. And I think that's,
Yeah,
to your earlier question, I think that's going to be the future. It's going to happen, and people might not know it's happening, but it's
yeah.
there.
I feel like that's when this industry is mature enough, is when you don't have to deal with all the complexities, whether you think gaming or whether you think, DeFi or trading or just interacting with a certain project. Like right now, it just feels like a really like if I didn't know anything about blockchain and cryptocurrency and I went into the space today, I wouldn't know where to start. Like, okay, maybe
Yeah.
I'm gonna start in Ethereum or Solana or any of the other hundreds of chains that are available for me to just go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And
It's
it's a deep rabbit hole because there's no standardization. Some use Ethereum uses Solidity to code smart contracts, but then Polkadot uses Rust, and then some use JavaScript, and it
and you have
just
Sui and Aptos. They're on Move, right? And that's a yeah.
yeah.
So like it's yeah, it's very complicated. You want to remove those barriers definitely for end users.
Yeah, 100%. So, what are your guys' plans then for this year and for next year?
Yeah. So this year we'll complete the next version of the companion app. So that's hopefully will be finished by December. There's every 2 weeks there's a new patch, so like we're just adding new features, refining. We have two games. They should release end of the year. Like
Nice.
current goal is like end of November, and then we're going to do our token launch this fall. And so yeah, some three large milestones. We're also going to announce some larger games we're working with, some larger partnerships that we're working with. And so I think
Nice.
there should be a lot more news coming. Maybe end of summer, maybe towards August, we'll be announcing a lot more stuff.
Oh, sounds exciting. Is there an airdrop?
There probably will be.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah,
And if people want to get involved and try the games and claim the airdrop and all that, what are the main socials and where
yeah.
they
The
can
best
follow
way to
you?
follow us now is Play Evergreen on Twitter, and you can join our Discord as well. I think we've got close to 30,000 people in Discord now, so it's popping in there. I like that. Twitter is growing. I think I didn't have a Twitter 2 months ago, and then everyone's like, "Oh, you have to get on Twitter," and so like I'd have a personal Twitter and the company Twitter. And I think we're at over 200,000 people in 2 months.
Oh
That feels
wow,
like a good number.
that's a great
Um,
number. It's a
yeah,
fantastic number.
yeah. So it's all moving. People seem to be digging what we're putting down.
Yeah. Well, it feels like it's a testament, right? That people feel like you guys are doing the right thing and you're building the right tools and the right games, have the right vision. And it's great to have that social proof for sure.
Yeah, I think it definitely makes the team feel better.
Yeah,
Like if
100%.
people care about what we're doing.
It's very reassuring. And I will definitely keep an eye out on any games releasing. If there's a beta that I can apply to, just let me know and
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
definitely,
We'll get you in.
test
We'll
some
get you into the
stuff.
next beta.
Nice.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I'll make sure we add
Um,
some vampires, and then
Vampires or Vikings, and I'm
vampires
there the
Viking.
whole day.
I feel like there's an opportunity for a vampire Viking game.
I feel that's an untapped market.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna look into it. I'm going
I
back to the
feel
team right now.
undead vampire Vikings,
Yeah. Sounds
100%.
good.
Well, listen, this has been fantastic, and thanks for coming on and talking about Midnight. it's genuinely, it's an exciting project, and it's doing some unique things that I haven't seen in gaming or Web3. And yeah, I'll keep an eye on it, and I wish you guys all the best. And you're always welcome to come on in a few months time or next year, and just to kind of check in on the progress, see what you guys are at, what games you've developed and released in the meantime.
Oh, that'd be great. Thanks for the invite. Yeah, love to have an update.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, and have a lovely rest of your day.
Likewise. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye, everyone.